The next bill on the calendar for today is Senate File 3045. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 3045, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state government operations, establishing a biennial budget, appropriating money for the legislature, certain constitutional offices and state agencies, the unofficial engrossment.
There are amendments at the desk. If there is no objection, we will let the author explain the bill before we act on those amendments. I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. Senate File 3045 is the State Government Finance Bill. This 2025 State Government Finance Budget Bill does really important things. Really important things. What it does is it funds this building where we work. It funds the legislature that we have all taken an oath to uphold. When I say that it funds the legislature, it funds the nonpartisan staff that we all rely on. It funds the reviser who make our work possible. It funds the front desk that keeps this floor working. It funds every one of your staff members, whether Republican or Democrat. It pays their salaries. It pays their benefits. It's an important bill that should not be taken lightly. I want you to think about it. I see the heads down so that you don't have to think about what you may not want to vote on today. But it's an important part of the people's voice. It's an important part of our democracy. That's what this bill does. It funds this Capitol, which is the beacon of democracy in our state. Further, it supports 30 boards and commissions. It supports major parts of the government that most people don't see but touch their lives every day. Management and budget, Minnesota IT, the Department of Administration. It funds our constitutional officers. This is a bill, while many people have no idea what our committee does, is very important for the work that we do. This is not the bill that Co-Chair Nash or I would have written by ourselves. But it does two important things. It holds the growth of government, which is important to your side of the aisle, and it holds core services, which is important to our side of the aisle. It is truly a compromise bill. I'd like to talk about some of the provisions that are in the bill. There are important anti-fraud measures that are both DFL and GOP-led. Let me get to my notes here. It starts a healthy aging subcabinet, which is the work of a 2-year-long legislative task force on aging. It provides Minnesota businesses filing fraud protection. It allows the Attorney General's office to continue to support our counties when they need help with prosecution of violent crimes. This bill also helps fund the Office of the Attorney General with Medicaid fraud prevention, and we'll hear a little bit more about that on third reading. But most importantly, it maintains the capacity of our state to serve the very people who sent us here. And with that, I'm going to ask if we can allow the conversation to go to my co-chair. But before I do that, I'd like to thank the staff, the very staff who are relying on this bill's passage. I'd like to thank our nonpartisan staff, Helen Roberts, for her fiscal advice and expertise. I'd like to thank Colby Sullivan for House Research and all of the great things that he does for us. I'd like to thank the reviser's staff who has put so many copies of this bill together. I'd like to thank my side of the aisle's partisan staff. I'd like to thank Amanda Rudolph, who has been my constant companion on this journey in state government since I arrived. And I would like to thank John Baylor, who is our researcher, and Sam O'Neill, who is our committee legislative assistant. I'd also like to thank the pages who show up at before 8:15 every day to help us be ready and to deal with the concerns and the issues that we have with technology and making sure that our guests always feel welcome and that the people of Minnesota, when they come to testify, have a friendly voice and a friendly face to help them with the needs that they have in the committee process. So I would like to turn the floor over now to my co-chair Nash.
I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chair Cleavorn. I will start off by also thanking Helen Roberts, Colby Sullivan, and our staff, our partisan staff that are stashed here in the back. Jacob Grundhauser, who was also my constant companion. Justin Brill, our researcher. Allie Winter, my CA. But also want to thank the other side's partisan as well. As we were working through the bill, it was a very collaborative effort, and Chair Cleavorn is exactly right. If I was given a box full of pens and a blank piece of paper, I would not have written this bill. My bill would have been much different, but we are in a 67-67 tie. And that's where we find ourselves, is that Chair Cleavorn's pens wrote half the ink and I wrote the other half. But we did so amicably, and I think that that was a good outcome. For my side of the aisle, you know, we have been very focused in the last number of months on things around waste, fraud, and abuse. You will see in here that there is the totality of House File 23. There is an allocation for 4 new employees at the Office of the Legislative Auditor who will begin looking at those things. And that, if I remember from Chair Quam, has not been done in a very, very long time. I think he said 3 varies when he told me. But I will echo what Chair Cleavorn said, that in a 67-67 tie, as I think all of you know, we have the same amount of staff that support us on a daily basis, and that's in this bill. So we have the same number of LAs, we have the same number of comms people, we have the same number of CAs, we have the same number of staff between the 2 caucuses, and Speaker Demuth and Speaker Emerita Hortman made an agreement that that was going to be what we were going to do, and that's carried in this bill. Carried in this bill, too, is the chief clerks of our chamber, and there are none better. If you want to see the fact that there are none better, go over and watch the Senate, and then you come back here and realize we've got it really good over here in the House. Also is the funding for the Sergeant at Arms, and it is a bill that covers a lot of things. You know, for my side of the aisle, we did make significant cuts, and Chair Cleavorn was good to work with when we realized the target that we had, despite my pleadings with the Ways and Means chairs to put a negative sign in front of the target that I was asking for. This is what we got. And if you don't like it, you can talk to Chair Torkelson. I'll give you his phone number. But it's a bill that is written by 2 people from 2 sides of the aisles in as good a fashion as we possibly could do. There are things in here for Republicans, there are things in here for Democrats, and again, if I had been left to my own devices, it would have been a much different bill. But it's what we have, and I will yield back to the author.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to discuss the elections portions of this bill. So in Minnesota, we're proud of our long track record of leadership in voting and civic engagement. This bill ensures that here in Minnesota, our elections are safe, secure, and free. The elections provisions fund the Campaign Finance Board and provide necessary matched funds for the Help America Vote Act. These dollars are primarily used for election security measures like cybersecurity software, improvements to the statewide voter registration system, and the Security Navigator team. Minnesotans deserve to know whose dollars are attempting to sway our elections, so we ensure that the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board has the resources necessary to inform the public and to keep our elections fair. The budget in this bill couldn't be much simpler. It fits onto one page. It includes $200,000 for the Help America Vote Act, which I just mentioned, $79,000 for an operating adjustment for the Campaign Finance Board, and the base budget for the Campaign Finance Board. It also includes several policy provisions, and I'll list several of the bills that are included. It includes Representative Gordon's bill dealing with publication of temporary polling locations. It includes Representative and Vice Chair Altendorf's bill dealing with the standard for determining the residence of an individual subject to a civil commitment order. It contains Vice Chair Liz Lee's bill dealing with polling place closures and requiring notice to be posted until the occurrence of a presidential election or redistricting. It includes Representative Tabke's bill dealing with the situation he experienced in Shakopee and the absentee votes there. It includes Co-Chair Quam's bill dealing with the filing period for special elections. It includes one of my bills dealing with reporting requirements related to the economic interest statement. It includes Representative Engen's bill related to political expenditures by organizations that receive state funding, which we've already passed off the floor. It includes Representative Jones's bill dealing with apartment access. And then Co-Chair Quam and I both had larger bills containing a multitude of election-related provisions. Mine was the Secretary of State's administrative bill. Co-Chair Quam's contained several of the priorities of the Republican Party, and we included several provisions from both of those bills. Just to mention a few, there were some changes to the process where the Secretary of State gets lists of election judges from the parties. There's a change of the in-person absentee ballot drop-off time from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m., and there's the creation of a phone line that can be used in some circumstances by election administrators, enabling them to contact the Secretary of State. Like Chair Cleavorn, I have several thank yous I'd like to do. So I wanted to thank the committee administrators, Pat Kaluza and Wilson Lee, our committee legislative assistants, Chris Ohlendorf and Rebecca Reiners, our partisan researchers, John Beeler and Will Golding, nonpartisan staff for the committee, including Matt Gehring, Chelsea Griffin, and Helen Roberts, committee page, Riley Jones, House Public Information Services for making us look a lot better than we do in real life, and Co-Chair Quam, you've been a very fair chair of the committee, and it's been great working with you. You've always shown respect to our party when you're in the chair, and I really appreciate that. When you have the gavel, Vice Chairs Altendorf and Lee, and committee members of both sides. And I look forward to the rest of the discussion, and I don't know if I'm supposed to yield to Co-Chair Quam or how this is supposed to work exactly, but I'll leave it in your hand.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Sexton moves to amend Senate File Number 3045, the unofficial engrossment. The amendment is coded A7.
I recognize the member from Waseca, Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is the same amendment that I introduced on Tuesday, then withdrew for germaneness. It's a very simple addition to the bill. It basically allows one of us, if we deploy on active duty, to basically either vote remotely, which we still can do, or have somebody else stand in for us as a proxy. I recommend a yes vote on this.
Discussion to the amendment, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if the author would yield to a question, please.
Representative Sexton will yield. Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. My question for, first, I want to thank you for your service. You've done many, many years of service in the military, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude for that. You and I have had discussions about that service. I understand how complicated it was, and so thank you for that work. My question is, could you please tell me tell the body the length of time your longest tour of duty might have been?
Representative Sexton.
Mine were very short and frequent, usually. sometimes, especially after 9/11, was about 5 months. Typically, they can go over a year, but most cases nowadays are about 6 months. So hopefully that answers the question.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you, and I'm wondering if the representative would continue to yield.
Representative Sexton will continue to yield. Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you again. My question now is, when a military member is on active duty or deployed, is it that member would have access always to a telephone or methods of communication in real time?
Representative Sexton.
Many times, yes. So, for example, if I'm preparing to look at legislation, we've still got email. We've got some of the best communications in the world. I could even video into this room if I needed to. Absolutely. But there are times, like if I was flying the aircraft I used to fly and a vote was occurring, I would need somebody to stand in for me as a proxy to make that vote.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you, and would Representative Sexton continue to yield, please?
Representative Sexton will continue to yield. Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you, and I appreciate your sharing your knowledge with me because I have never been on active duty. So I appreciate the fact that communications might be possible. My question to you now is, when a member signs up for active duty or for the military as a whole, my thought would be that member of the military would take their position incredibly seriously, and that they would want to be able to focus 100% on the mission at hand. That would be my thought, and it is honestly my belief that they do. So my question to you would be, how do you see this 100%? I mean, you can't serve two masters at one time, right? So how does a member of the military stay focused 100% on the mission at hand, as well as 100% focused on the work of the body and following a legislative hearing?
Representative Sexton.
I believe the purpose of this bill is when you're having to dedicate 100% of your time, then you actually request a proxy. If there's times, and there are many times when you're not actually out on the front line or flying the aircraft, when you may not fly or do something super intense for days at a time. So at that option, we could certainly remote in if we needed to and still actually honor the wishes of our constituents, which is the underlying purpose of this bill.
Representative Cleaborn.
Thank you. And now I would like, if it's appropriate, to just speak to the amendment. Is that the...
Representative Cleaborn, you still have the floor.
Thank you. What I would like to say about this amendment is that there are many issues that vary between deployment and wherever you are, right? Whether you're deployed domestically or deployed someplace else. And these are the things that I believe we should be working out in committee. And I believe these are things that we should know. Exactly what does this vote mean to us as a body? When this amendment was originally offered on a different bill, I immediately went to the author and said, I think this may have merit. I would really appreciate an opportunity for you to draft a bill. There is no bill. And I would appreciate having an opportunity to fully vet this bill in committee. I went straight over and made that offer. And now we have an amendment of great weight. It is not a simple amendment. There are questions about when is a member on active duty and when is a position vacant. I think the author and I would share the opinion that people should have a chance to serve in the legislature and serve their country in other ways. But there are pieces that need to be worked out and details that need to be worked out before we just say, yes, proxy voting is okay. I've heard arguments that proxy voting is happening in our body. And it does happen in the Senate. They have proxy voting. The difference is we know that they can always reach the legislator to ask that legislator for their opinion. The people of a district elect one representative. They don't elect a one representative and a proxy. The people of a district have the right to know who is casting the vote for them. And these are things that we need to work out in committee. And these are the pieces that we need to hear from active duty members. How many active duty members would want to do this? Share both service of country in the military and service of country in the legislature. I did a little research into this after I had made the offer to hear the bill, and what I have learned is that in 100 years, we have had 4 instances where this might have come up. And in the last 50 years, 1. And I would say that we have the ability through rules to have this discussion as well, which is also a committee that this can go to. And we can have the discussion on a case-by-case basis. Is proxy voting really effective for this member at this time for these short stays that you're talking about? If it's, a month or 3 weeks, but if it extends beyond a year or even 6 months, is that too long? Is that what the public expects of their representative? To actually run for office and then not be present to hear their voices, to take their concerns, and to take that responsibility and hand it off to another legislator. And I don't know that if it's right or wrong, but I think the public should have a say in the democracy and who represents them. So I would ask our side of the aisle to vote no on this amendment, not because I think it's a bad idea as a whole, but because there needs to be a fuller and more robust conversation. So I would ask again, and I would make my offer very clear, that I would like to have a committee hearing on this to discuss it. But at this time, until we have more details worked out, I think the change to statute is premature, and I would ask for a no vote. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Katiza Watoon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I rise just to address this on a very local level. One of my school board members is currently deployed, and we knew that it was going to be an extended deployment. He's overseas. He's gone for a minimum of 12 months, and there was much discussion in the community about how we should handle this. And so he's opted to take a leave of absence, and a temporary member of the school board was appointed to vote and serve on his behalf while he is deployed. And I think this example just goes to show that there are so many different circumstances that this could impact, and how it impacts folks on a local level, at the school board level, how it impacts constituents at the legislative level. So I would agree with Chair Cleavorn that we should vote no on this amendment and take it up in committee process next session.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. No. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted.
Division, Mr. Speaker.
Division has been called for. Members, you must be at your own seat to be counted. All those in favor of the amendment, please rise. You may take your seat. Oh, wait, are we still counting over there? Okay, I'm sorry. Stay standing. Oh, I was counting too. I don't count. Okay, I don't count. You may be seated. All those opposed to the amendment, please rise. There being 58 ayes and 52 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of order.
Mr. Speaker, we did not call the members who are voting remotely.
In the case of a division in which members are asked to stand, it is impossible to ask an individual to remote vote when they cannot stand. To be recognized.
Mr. Speaker, our practice has been that when there is a when we are doing a division and there are people participating remotely, that we have always called those individuals to ask them to what their vote is. It is very easy to hear what the vote is of those individuals and to add them to the vote totals of those who are standing.
Under a voice vote, these members did not vote. They were not called upon to insert their vote and to be tallied, and as a result, when a division is called, that division is to determine the total number of individuals who had voted on the voice vote. There being no voice vote in which a member was able to vote remotely, thus they are not counted because they cannot stand and they didn't vote on the previous vote. So, the Speaker has decided that this amendment, based off of the numbers, prevails. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Coulter moves to amend Senate File Number 3045, the unofficial engrossment. As amended, the amendment is coded A5.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment would require the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board to create a plain language lobbying handbook that would be accessible to the public. This language was originally introduced in House File 1949 and then incorporated into House File 2284, which is a larger bill of mine that strengthens and clarifies our laws on lobbying, particularly at the local level, based on recommendations from the Campaign Finance Board. House File 2284, for reasons that frankly aren't entirely clear to me because no one I've asked has actually given me a reason, has been stalled in the process. And I brought this amendment because it felt like the least objectionable piece. This was not intended to be a gotcha amendment. Like, we're not going to run mail saying so-and-so voted against a plain language lobbying handbook. That's just not something we're going to do. I really did want to try and get it added to the bill. You know, I didn't run for office to work on lobbying laws. But as I've found myself doing this work in my third session now, I've discovered how incredibly important, how valuable these laws are. The rules of the road for lobbying matter. They matter because at the core of the issue is something that is fundamental to our system of government. You know, I believe with every fiber of my being that anyone and everyone has the right and maybe even the obligation to advocate to their government officials, to say, this is what I believe and this is what I want you to do about it. But when someone is getting paid, and in Minnesota you have to make more than $3,000 a year doing it, when someone is profiting directly off of their ability to influence the decisions that get made by their government, Minnesotans have a right to know. They have a right to know who is lobbying, who are they lobbying, and who is paying them. And it is just as important for folks to know when someone is lobbying the governor or the legislature as it is if someone is lobbying, say, the Carver County Board or the Concord Township Board or the Bloomington City Council. You could even argue that it's more important to know who is lobbying folks at the local level, since those decisions often have a more everyday effect on our neighbors' lives. But there continue to be efforts to weaken those laws, to further cloud Minnesotans' ability to know and to even carve out some people who, by virtue of money or position, may have the most power to influence decision makers. Doing so would not only erode the trust that our neighbors put in our officials, but it could well harm Minnesotans' lives. My hope, and this is a sincere hope, my hope is that if any of these ideas come before us at any time, that we take a step back and put personalities and parties aside and put the interests and needs of Minnesotans first. Now, I'm not a big fan of offering amendments and withdrawing them. I also didn't run for office to make speeches. But in the interests of keeping this bill in its present form and out of deep respect for Chair Cleavorn, and if I'm honest, a little bit of fear, I will at this time withdraw the A5 amendment.
Representative Coulter withdraws his amendment. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Schultz moves to amend Senate File Number 3045, the unofficial engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A17.
I recognize Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I begin, I'd just like to request a roll call on the A17 amendment.
A roll call has been requested. Do I see 15 hands? There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are the elected voice of the people of Minnesota. We are the body and the legislature that sets the policies that Minnesotans ultimately live by the law. And unfortunately, over these last few years, we have seen, as we've had an unchecked and uncontrolled executive in this state, whether it was the shutdowns that happened or whether it was the sorts of rules that the agencies brought about to determine and tell Minnesotans what kind of vehicle they should drive, and to tell Minnesotans what kind of vehicles they can drive. That's the sort of attitude that we've seen under the clean car rules that have been adopted straight out of California. And it's time now more than ever for the legislature to take back its rightful role in crafting the policies that Minnesotans must live by. Not an out-of-control state agency, and certainly not an out-of-touch governor who fails to meet with the people of Minnesota. So the A17 amendment simply seeks to get after this point and to prohibit this sort of rule that could be brought about by a state agency to limit the rights of Minnesotans to purchase a gas-powered vehicle, a leaf blower, a chainsaw, pressure washers, and more that Minnesotans rely upon today. Because if we continue to let this executive branch run out of control, Minnesotans will be harmed. So I encourage support of the A17 amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. I'm going to not go into all of the details that we just heard from my colleague across the aisle. I don't accept the premise of the things that he just said, and I'm just going to ask our side of the aisle to please vote no.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. The chief clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Cha.
Go ahead.
Cha, no.
Cha votes no. Green.
Go ahead, Julie.
No.
Green votes no. Hussein.
Go ahead.
Hussein, no.
Hussein votes no. McDonald. McDonald.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 65 yeas and 67 nays, the amendment does not prevail. It is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Howard moves to amend Senate File number 3045, the unofficial engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A16.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as you all know, our president has unleashed a lot of chaos into our economy and significant harm with his federal tariffs. You may groan, but you know who else is groaning? The people of Minnesota, who are paying higher prices, our small businesses who are having their doors shuttered, and entire economic sectors that are really very worried about what the harm is going to be done, not just now, but in the future. And it never really ends. Just today, there was a story on the Star Tribune about the impact of our small business, particularly companies that make board games who are going to have to shutter their doors. What a buzzkill. And really, it just speaks to how significant we're seeing those harms all across our economy. And we, as the legislature, we can't control what the president's going to do with our tariffs, but we can control getting prepared, listening to Minnesotans, listening to our farmers, our small businesses, those who are being harmed by these tariffs. And so what this amendment would do would be to ask the Commissioner of Management and Budget to create an action plan, assess the economic harms, the ways that costs are going up for our consumers on things from housing, their groceries, their gas, consult with our farmers, with those in manufacturing and small businesses, those that are already seeing significant harms, and come up with a study and an action plan to address the concerns that we're seeing from these tariffs. You know, we don't know exactly what will come next from this president related to tariffs. You know, they were up, they were down, they're up, they're still here. The harms are real. I talked to a small business owner not long ago an independent small business owner who owns a toy shop. And he said the 145% tariff on China goods and the reciprocal tariffs means that a toy in his store that will cost $10, or used to cost $10, will now cost $25 this year. That's real. Those are real impacts, and we shouldn't shrug. We shouldn't put our heads in the sand. We should care about that and get ready to make a plan. But members, this provision, I know you'd like to talk about this for hours at length, but it's not a provision critical to funding state government in this bill that Chair Cleveland and Chair Nash are carrying, so I'll withdraw the amendment at this time.
Representative Howard withdraws the A16 amendment. There are amendments at the desk. Right. The clerk will report the amendment.
Greenman moves to amend Senate File number 3045, the unofficial engrossment. As amended, the amendment is coded A18.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will make sure that there's an opportunity to debate this bill. I would like a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Greenman has requested a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The A18 is a simple provision that says that nobody can buy, induce, bribe voters in order to register to vote in a certain way to get them to vote. Now, in Minnesota law, it's already illegal. What this does is it says we're going to close that loophole. It is going to be crystal clear that you also can't do that by offering that inducement as a lottery or as a promise with a big novelty check at the end. You can't promise to win something that it is already illegal to offer directly. Now, if you look at this amendment, you will see a few things. One, that all it is doing is saying a person is guilty of a misdemeanor if they willfully, directly, indirectly provide a chance to win food, money, liquor, clothing, entertainment to induce someone to register to vote or to sign a petition. That mirrors the language right above it that's already in law about inducing them to vote or vote a certain way. I will think we had a long conversation in Elections Committee about this bill, and I actually took some of the good feedback and advice from my colleagues across the aisle. Representative Davis mentioned, what about entering into a lottery and what you get is a campaign hat or a t-shirt? And so we added both into the bribery statute as well as into this provision an amendment that it excludes anything up to $20. So if that's what the petition is for, if that's what the lottery is for, if that's what you're giving, now with this vote you can legally do it. So why do we need this and why do we need this now? So there has been an innovation as we think about the way that billionaires and millionaires have used their weight and their power, their money in our elections. We have seen it on campaign ads. We have seen it in our doors and in our mailers. Well, now there's this other way. And it circumvents the law. In Wisconsin, it was likely illegal. In Pennsylvania, it was likely illegal. Here in Minnesota, we're going to say it is illegal to offer $1 million, to offer $500,000, to sign a petition that is election related within the time where people are voting in order to get them to register or vote. This matters because this practice is moving from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin, and it's coming west, and I'm sure at some point it will hit Minnesota. So what's the problem? Well, as we've seen, billionaires, the richest man in the world, has used this innovation, but we know that billionaires are billionaires. Whether they support Democrats or Republicans, whether they support conservative issues or Republican issues, it is a problem for all of us. And it's not just about who your billionaires or my billionaires or our billionaires. No billionaires should be able to bribe, to buy, or induce voters to register or to vote. Now, what can we do? This is a very, very simple provision. It is a provision that here today we can put into this bill. It is a provision that is already in the Senate's bill. And what it says is, I won't even name them because that's one of the things we talked about, but you all know their names. You all have some you like to say on the floor. I have some I like to say on the floor. But what we know is that for them, $1 million is pocket change. It's a rounding error. But if you are a voter and someone says, sign this, do something, and I'll give you $1 million, that is a huge inducement. That means a lot. And we can't do that. I don't have $1 million to offer someone to do something. So here, all we're saying is that's illegal. You can't offer someone, you can't induce them, you can't have a lottery to vote. We all in this place should be about our voters. We should be about folks who register and vote and participate. This is just another way that billionaires are using their wealth to consolidate power in our democracy. And that is something that I know, having lots of conversations across the aisle, all of us are concerned about. So here we go. A yes vote here puts this into statute. It'll prevent this from coming west. And we can all today say, no to billionaires bribing and inducing folks directly or through chances to win big novelty checks. Members, I'd ask you to vote yes.
Thank you. We're on discussion of the 18. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was wondering if the author would yield for a question.
She will yield. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Greenman, if under current law, without your amendment in place, if someone says, I will give you $15 for every Democrat candidate you vote for, is that illegal under current Minnesota law?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I can just read it to you because it's right in our amendment. It says, a person who willfully, directly or indirectly pays or offers something of value, promises to obtain, in order to induce a voter to refrain from voting or vote in a particular way, is guilty of a felony. So that, I think the answer to your question would be yes.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Greenman. That's exactly the language that I was really concerned about, because your amendment adds language that says that that paragraph does not apply to an item, service, or other consideration, which would include money, with a fair market value of less than $20. So my question, if Representative Greenman will yield for another question.
Representative Greenman will yield. Representative Niska.
So, Representative Greenman, if George Soros, after passage of your amendment, says, I will give every voter of Minnesota $15 for every Democrat candidate that they vote for, doesn't line 1.10 and 1.11 make that bribe now legal under your amendment?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that this is just extending the de minimis. Right now, I think that there's a $5 bribery statute that is included in another piece of this section. We went from 5 to 20 in response to what was raised in committee about a concern that you couldn't give away a T-shirt. I am 100% willing, if you're concerned about that or the language, because I believe we added it in response to GOP feedback in conference, to take that out if that's what you're concerned about.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think if everyone was listening very carefully, the answer to the question is yes, that in fact what the Greenman Amendment does is legalize literal bribery up to $19.99 for each vote. You know, if you take out your ballot in a general election, there's a whole bunch of things on the ballot. You're now, if there's 20 offices up for election, this now legalizes bribery of every voter up to $19.99 per election on your ballot. I think that's a bad idea. I'm going to vote no against bribery, legalizing bribery in Minnesota. Members vote no.
Further discussion, Representative Franson.
Thank you, Speaker. If Representative Greenman would yield to a question.
She will yield. Representative Franson.
Representative Greenman, under your amendment, would Alex Soros still be able to donate to the Democrat caucus or to members of your party?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, you all, many of your party have not voted with us on many amendments that would actually limit the big money that is being donated to both parties. So you bring up Soros, we will bring up Musk, you can bring up Weiss, we can bring up Bezos, or whoever is whoever. What I will say is, since my time here in office, I have noticed that when we bring amendments trying to overturn Citizens United, when we bring amendments trying to eliminate the influence of foreign influence corporations to give to parties or in the independent space, that we have not had your support. So no, I don't think this is a bribery statute, not a campaign finance statute. So it doesn't intend to, neither does it change where people can donate to parties if they're doing it through the campaign finance system as set up under 211B and 10A.
Representative Franson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, that is a yes. George Soros and Alex Soros can still donate to the Democrat Party. I have checked campaign finance reports. $0 have come to our party from Elon Musk. But that party is supported by the Soros family, and we've got pictures to prove it. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A18 amendment. Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have a question for the author as well. This is not a gotcha question.
Representative Greenman will yield. Representative Bliss.
Thank you. It's not a gotcha question. It's an actual valid question. I believe you're an election attorney. Does this, so the amendment says that it can't give something of $20 or less than $20 to get a chance to win something larger. Does this apply to tribal nations to get free play, to play the slot machines to win a larger thing? Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Bliss. It actually allows me, this is a very limited provision. This is just about in the election context. So if you look at the language, what it says is a registered or eligible voter to sign a petition that is material or related to an election during the period beginning on the first day of the absentee voting period for that election and ending on election day. So I don't, unless, if what the hypo you were concocting or you were coming up with was about, that was just the first words. If the hypothetical that you were, that you're talking about is related to the election in the period while people are voting, yes, it would apply equally to everyone, but I don't think that that's what you're talking about. So.
Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if the author would yield again.
She will yield. Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not a hypothetical, and this is for registration to vote in the voting period, to go to an early election site, register to vote, and to receive a voucher for free gaming to win, for something to win. And the reason I ask is generally tribal nations are not subject to state law, so I'm curious, does this apply to them?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker. I believe that as it relates to our voting laws, and I can get back to you on this, but I believe as it relates to our voting and bribery laws, that affects everybody in the state. And I would look into the example you're bringing up, because I haven't heard of that, but I'm happy to talk about it off the floor.
Any further discussion to the A18 amendment? The member from Ramsey, Representative Finke.
Thank you, Speaker Schultz. You must have forgotten me. Thank you to Representative Greenman for your amendment. I just want to take the conversation back to the intention of the amendment, which is to prevent billionaires from using their endless amounts of resources to influence the outcome of an election in a way that is clearly bribery. That is what we're talking about. That is what we have seen happen several times across the country. There is one particular billionaire that we all know of who wants to move to Mars, who is guilty of this. And we should be proactive about how we want to protect the election integrity in Minnesota. And the reason that I'm rising specifically to talk about this, you know, I think it's important what Rep. Franzen and Rep. Niska said about this is very important. I think all billionaires are bad. I think anyone they donate to should not take that money. It is actually wrong that there are so many billionaires. So not only should we probably do something about the hoarding of wealth in a way that is so disgraceful to the economic reality of our country, but we should also make sure they're not going to give money to anyone. And we have had opportunities. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker.
You have the floor, Representative
Thank you. That's a real problem, and we have ways to solve it. And one first way is to say you can't give away $1 million to a voter. It's clearly wrong. Everyone can feel that that is wrong. But I also want to say that the particular space-bound billionaire who is doing this is not doing this just to elect Republicans. His goal is not to elect Republicans, in fact. If you look at the words that this person says, his goals are far, far darker than electing Republicans. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I would appreciate, they don't have to listen, but I would appreciate the opportunity to speak to the room.
Members, please take your conversations to the alcoves or to the retiring room. Representative Finke.
I don't know what's funny about it, but we do know that Elon Musk has plans for the future of the country. He has stated plans, and he is spending his money in a way that is looking to execute those plans. And the part of what he is trying to do is to actually eliminate transgender people. Eliminate them. And I think that you should know that is the person that you are defending the right to give countless dollars to the American political system. Maybe some of you share that goal, but it's important for me to have on the record that this person who we are letting influence the national election at a level that is so far beyond anything any of us have ever seen a single individual do, has a stated plan to eliminate transgender people from the world. That's on the people who support him.
Oh, the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I understood what you said. I can read lips. The author of the amendment, would they yield for a question or two?
Representative Greenman will yield. Representative Quam.
One of the things that I've noticed, especially in the presidential campaigns, is you'll have very famous performers at rallies. And it's come out that some of them have been paid tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, large sums to participate in these events. In these rallies, there is quite common to have people sign up and register and also circulate petitions. I can imagine the ticket price for some of these people being above $20. So if they're at an event performing and you get free admission to the event and they've got petitions and things to sign and register people, how does this, if this becomes law, how does your language affect that type of activity?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Quam. I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about that, and especially since our conversation. There's nothing in this that prevents voter registration from being everywhere. The question is whether you're offering something in order to induce voter registration. And this has been the rule for a while. So Ben & Jerry's, if you, on election day, you can go get a free ice cream. They're not inducing you to vote. After you voted, you can walk in and get a free ice cream. In this case, if you have a concert, you know, whoever your concert is, and you're offering the opportunity to register to vote, and folks can still go to the concert, then you shouldn't have a problem under current law, and you won't have a problem under the bill as it expands that to lotteries either.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author yield to another question?
She will yield. Representative Quam.
Okay. In with the, I should have had it specifically about the signing of petitions, which is a common practice at events. So if there's an event that is free and part of that activity there are petitions going around being signed that is over $20, do you consider that as being illegal if your language passes?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like the bribery bill that is currently on law, what it says is in order to induce. So if you are circulating a petition, now if the petition's being circulated outside of that voting, first day of absentee balloting voting, this law doesn't apply. So the law doesn't even start until you're actually in that voting period. If the petition that is being circulated is not materially related to the election, also doesn't apply. But if the petition you're circulating at this free event that is related to the election that is in that period is circulating and you're not, and you can go and you can sign it or not sign it, you're not inducing them. And so this law, like the bribery statute that's currently on the books, would not apply.
Representative Quam.
Thank you. So there are occasions documented, and in fact, one of the presidential candidates used up over like $1 billion, and there were huge, six-figure amounts of money or more going to very prominent people who participated in activities. And as part of that activity, there were planned petitions, drives at some of those events, not all. I don't see as to where that should be legal now. And you even said that it wouldn't be, legal now. There's no difference. So, frankly, I wish, if your intent is to prevent expensive enticements to do things related to elections, your bill is lacking in some clarity, which would let things slide. Plus, Representative Niska brought up that it could easily be interpreted as allowing for the legalization of an activity that is currently illegal. And, with the broad discretion we've seen in the courts for interpreting legislative intent, I don't think I would be surprised one bit. But I'll thank you for answering the questions. I'll sit back and maybe grab some popcorn.
Further discussion, the member from Morrison, Representative Krisha.
Thank you, members, and appreciate the amendment. I just think it's interesting. I thought I would bring a little clarification as we like to throw out the billionaire terms. And I mean, what have the billionaires actually done for us? I mean, I don't know, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller pretty much built us through the Midwest and in the rural areas and brought rural unification of electricity. I mean, I think that was a pretty good deal. Mackenzie Scott, I don't know, she just threw out $19 billion to 2,000 some nonprofits. That's probably not so bad. So, I just think that it's funny how we're going to get down on the people who have decided to pull things up and try to build things and I mean, I don't know, Gates and Jobs. What do you got? Everyone got a phone here, an iPad? I mean, that was kind of a terrible thing. I mean, you know, the internet, gosh, I don't know if I use that very often. So I don't know, let's just have that day about billionaires for a while. That's kind of fun.
Further discussion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Katiza Watoon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just because people do good things doesn't mean they can't do bad things. So I think we should stop them from doing bad things. And since we can make laws, let's make laws preventing people from doing bad things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the A18 amendment, Representative Hansen, J.
Thank you, Chair. Will Representative Greenman yield for a question?
Representative Greenman will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you. Representative Greenman, I was just curious while we're on this topic of, who can or can't or what your amendment will or won't do. Will you just confirm for me about something I care a lot about? Is this going to prohibit convicted child sex traffickers from donating their profits, from selling children, from donating to Minnesota Republicans, the Republican Party of Minnesota, or any other political campaign, PAC, or party? Just curious. Thank you.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Mr. Speaker and Representative Hansen. Like everybody else, what this bill will do is prevent you from using the resources that you have gotten legally or ill-begotten resources from bribing, inducing, or buying voters either directly or through an election, a lottery. And I think that that makes a good point of the kind of people we don't want bribing voters, but frankly, even the best billionaires, I don't want bribing voters through a lottery. So this seems like a simple vote, a vote yes.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, and thank you for that answer. I don't know who I heard over there say be careful, but feel free to talk to me afterwards. I'd love to know what I'm being careful of when I talk about such things. Thank you, Speaker.
Further discussion, the member from Douglas, Representative Franson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging me. We were talking about billionaires, people, and the rise of billionaires and how many billionaires we have in this country and that it is disgusting. Let's hearken back a few years when Governor Walz shut down this state and closed all the small businesses and allowed who to prosper?
Point
Big
of order,
business.
Madam Mr. Speaker.
Big business that created
Long, state your point of
billionaires.
order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I failed to see what this has to do with the amendment at hand, and I raised to a point of order under 101.
I'm just going to remind members to confine the debate to the issue at hand, which is the A18 amendment. Representative Franson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as Leader Long would know, I eventually circle back. You just gotta go on a little journey with me, okay? You're shaking your head, but you know I'm right. I will get there. You just got to be a little patient, okay? So I gave many speeches on this floor during the shutdown when we were trying to undo the emergency orders so that small businesses could once again thrive in our state. And I raised concerns about the rise of big business and big billionaires. They were the ones getting rich off the backs of us while their businesses were shuttered and they were unable to have a living and their businesses closed, right? Target soared, Amazon soared. Meanwhile, Jim and Joe's little small town shop on Main Street was shuttered. That's on you, that's on you. Let's go to Mark Zuckerberg. He is worth about $202 billion. And you know what Mark Zuckerberg does? He has given money to Minnesota for our own elections. Your party has taken Mark Zuckerberg's billions of dollars and helped with the election infrastructure here in Minnesota. So perhaps you should just do a little digging into yourself about your love or hate of billionaires, and let's focus on the issues at hand.
Any further discussion? Representative Greenman, the author of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's been a lively conversation. It was a lively conversation in in committee. Just a few things, Representative Quammen, we've been talking about this, but it sounds like if you don't think that my bill goes far enough, you should vote for it, and then we can strengthen it. I think you'll probably be on the conference committee. And I appreciate the conversation about identifying where and where not. We would like to stop the process of billionaires, of millionaires, of companies from buying influence in our elections. I think that is a bigger conversation that I welcome the conversation and welcome you to drop some bills on this. I think it'd be nice to see. But what I will say is I don't come from the party of defending billionaires. And I hope you don't either. I know that there's lots of wealthy people who've done lots of good things, maybe, but what we're not talking about is their influence. We're talking about who decides our elections. We're talking about who influences voters. And there's been a lot of language, a lot of conversation, some very creative inversing, up is down, don't look up, sky is falling, yada, yada, yada. But what we are talking about here is a simple provision that says voters are not for sale. It is a simple provision that says no one can buy, bribe, or induce voters in order to get them to register or to vote in a certain way, and you can't do with a lottery and a novelty check what you already can't do under law directly. So this is not complicated. A vote against this is a vote to let what is happening in Pennsylvania, what happened in Wisconsin, come here, which is billionaires of whatever political class you want spend their money to try to buy voters. Wisconsin said they are not for sale. This amendment says Minnesota is also not for sale, and we're going to stand up and protect our voters. Members vote yes.
Roll call having been requested, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. This bill? Okay, all right. You're expecting it to be easy? The clerk will call the names of those voting remotely.
Cha.
Cha, yes.
Cha votes aye. Green.
Go ahead, Julie.
Green.
Yes.
One more time.
Yes.
Green votes aye. Hussein.
Go ahead. Vote no.
Hussein, aye.
Hussein votes aye. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. There are amendments at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Davis moves to amend Senate File Number 3045, the unofficial engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A10.
I recognize Representative Davis to explain the A10 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am offering the A10 amendment as a responsible adjustment to the Attorney General's budget. And I'll get more into that in a moment, but first I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call having been requested, seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The A10 reins in operational spending and one-time spending. It also maintains, though, the core functions by including the full expansion of the Medicaid fraud control unit. So we're not removing that. The Attorney General's budget has grown dramatically over the last 4 years. In 2020, fiscal year 20 to 21, his budget was $46.3 million. In 22-23, $54.9 million. 24-25, $96.9 million. That is a 109% increase in just over 4 years. Want to know what else has grown in extreme numbers over that time in the last few years? Fraud. The Attorney General's staffing has increased in lockstep with that as well. In 2019, the Attorney General's office had 323 full-time employees. In 2024, 392 full-time employees. And the projection for 2025 is that they will have 434 full-time employees. So just a few years ago, 323, bounce ahead just a few years, 434 full-time employees. That's an increase of 111 positions over 6 years. And I believe the Attorney General still has roughly almost 20 positions that he has yet to fulfill with money that's already been allocated for those positions. He hasn't filled them yet. And in this bill, we're going to give him more? Why would we do that? That's not responsible spending. Again, as these numbers have increased, so has the waste, fraud, and abuse with Minnesotans' hard-earned taxpayer dollars. I highly recommend that we be fiscally responsible and vote yes on this amendment. I don't want us to continue the unprecedented growth of government. I would also want to encourage the Attorney General to stop wasting our money on frivolous lawsuits protecting men and girls' locker rooms. That seems to be his policy these days. And we need to focus on filling the positions that he already has money allocated for. This is an easy yes vote. This is an easy, responsible vote. Thank you, members.
Discussion to the A10 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you, and I appreciate the passion for fraud prevention from my dear colleague. And one of the best ways to prevent fraud is to prosecute and lock up criminals. I have stated over and over that fraud is a criminal enterprise, and we always want to make sure that we are prosecuting those who commit fraud and those who take public resources and use them for their own personal gain. And I will support that all day long, which is why in 2023, when we were asked to fill the positions that were lacking in the Attorney General's office, I was happy to do so. And many of those positions were, in fact, to help us fight the fraud that the Attorney General had called to our attention. So I'm happy, and I will stand by those investments that we made in 2024 all day long. The other thing that those investments did in 2024 allowed the Attorney General's office to have the adequate staffing that they needed to be able to ensure that criminals all across our state, when the Attorney General was asked for assistance, that we had the staff necessary to prosecute the cases that our county attorneys all across our state were not capable of doing or did not have the expertise to do. So the cuts that you propose would be very damaging to our state in doing the very things that we would all like to see occur, criminals being prosecuted. So members, I would ask for a no vote on this amendment.
The representative from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Davis, for offering this amendment and addressing this important concern. Representative Cleavorn, the problem with your premise is that the assumption is that the Attorney General's office is actually doing that they're actually prosecuting crime. And of course, we know, based upon recent released audio recordings that were the subject of the Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Committee hearing earlier this week, that in point of fact, the current Attorney General has explicitly stated that he's doing the opposite of his job. And we know that because the presentation that was given in the Fraud Committee outlined what the Attorney General's job is, and it is in large part to represent the state agencies as they do their job, managing grants and ensuring that the funds that we appropriate in order to provide services for Minnesotans are actually being utilized appropriately. And instead of focusing on that in this recording that was released, and we've all listened to it, we've all heard the words that were said, the current Attorney General stated that he was in a battle with state agencies. He said, we're going to go fight these people in reference to state agencies. These are his clients. If this was a private attorney in a meeting with antagonists against his client, he would be disbarred for this conduct. And yet this is how he was dealing with his clients, the state agencies, in a conversation with people who would go on to be indicted, and some have even been convicted of some of the $250 million worth of fraud through Feeding Our Future. That is an unacceptable situation. I don't see why our taxpayers should be providing additional resources to an office that by its own leader, by its own constitutionally elected officer, the statements on the record, on tape, are not doing the job that they were constituted to do. It really is quite egregious, and it's interesting in the follow-up, the responses that we've gotten from the Attorney General's office and comments made in the press. The focus has been attempted to shift to, well, you know, I meet with constituents all the time, this was a routine meeting. The issue is not taking a meeting with people. The issue is what was explicitly said within the context of that meeting. And again, he said, we're in a battle with the state agencies. We're fighting these people being the folks who are directly responsible for providing oversight of grant recipients who were supposed to be feeding kids, but instead we're buying luxury cars, luxury homes, and going on vacations. If that's the culture of that office, I don't know why we should be funding it more than we currently are. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I actually intended to ask and will ask Representative Davis to yield for a question. But before I do, as another member of the Fraud Prevention Committee that spends a lot of time airing the reports of Alpha News and the Center of the American Experiment, and not as much time actually listening to the people who are fighting the fraud in our Medicaid control fraud prevention unit, or the prosecutors or the investigators. What I will say is the way you categorize what we heard was miles apart from what actually we heard. We didn't hear anybody in the AG's office say that in any way They were told to do anything differently than what we have heard for 3 years, which is they were cooperating with the investigation that was a month before a search warrant or and I think almost half a year before indictments were made. But more importantly, what we heard on the tape that I think you actually played was the diagramming of the way that fraudsters work in every area we see it. And we just spent time talking about the Veterans Claim Shark Bill, but it is the same thing. Because what we see is people build a business model, and then they go after the folks who are investigating, they go after the folks who are enforcing the law, sometimes with carrots, right? They come, they say, we'll give you campaign contributions. What we heard in that video that I think that you all played was that Keith said the Attorney General said this isn't about campaign contributions and rejected that on tape, and that's reflected in the news reports. But more importantly, what we saw was fraudsters who said, we'll give you things if you just come with us. And then we see fraudsters who threaten and say, we'll call you out for not supporting our community, we'll call you out for being racist or xenophobic or anti, you fill in the blanks of the community we're talking about. That was actually a really important piece of conversation we had on Monday, but not because it said that our agencies weren't doing anything wrong. I think what it said was they're doing everything right. But we did start to talk about the fraud that we are trying to prevent. So just on that, sort of transitioning to what the Attorney General's office does do and what this provision would take resources from, I'm asking if Representative Davis would yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Davis, so what the Attorney General, we heard talk about their criminal prosecution they have original jurisdiction as it relates to Medicaid, but they also do things like protect consumers from fraud. They do a ton of consumer protection. They have lawyers working consumer protection. They have lawyers working on wage theft. They have lawyers who are working on antitrust to protect free and fair trade for our small businesses. They have lawyers working on exploitive medical debt. I'm wondering, with the money that you are taking out of their budget, which of those provisions, which of those duties of the Attorney General's office do you want them to cut and do less of?
The member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not cutting anything from the budget. He already has a budget. We're not cutting here. And I would like to correct that thinking right now. The Attorney General came in asking for $15 million into our committee, which I am the one who brought up the Medicaid fraud unit in that committee, not him. I've been advocating for that for a long time. He came in asking for $15 million above his budget. And like I just said, when he doesn't even have close to filling positions for money that he already has allocated, that doesn't make any sense. Thank God Chair Nash negotiated that down to $3 million. There he is. Kudos to you for doing that. But this is not a cut to the Attorney General's budget. Again, I'm going to give you the numbers. Fiscal year 2020 to 2021, $46.3 million budget. 22-23, $54.9 million budget. 24-25, 96, and I misspoke earlier, I said 96.9, correction, 96.6. So a little bit lower, but not much. $96.6 million budget. Again, 109% increase. All the while, he's got the fraudsters making donations to him in his office. This is no cut to his budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that what you're talking about is a reallocation away from the lawyers who fight to protect are consumers who are getting ripped off by fraudsters. You are shifting money away from the workers who have been deprived of overtime, of minimum wage. You are shifting money away from small businesses who are getting killed by these big businesses, and you are shifting money away from the rest of the support that they provide in criminal prosecution. Now, the last thing I will say, because I think on this floor, when we hear untruths, we should say it. Everything that Alpha News and Center of the American Experiment publish is not always true. And if you listen to the video and you listen to the report that we have spent an hour and 45 minutes of our time dissecting, I'd say when we could have been talking about the work of the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit and haven't, hopefully we're going to get there soon, but when we do that, what you hear is that all of the insinuations you're making are false. And so what I would like to do is focus on the facts, which is what you want to do is take lawyers who prosecute and pursue settlements for consumers, for workers, for small businesses. You want to shift that away, call it a cut, call it a shift, take resources away from that. I think that's wrong. I'm going to stand up for consumers. I'm going to stand up for our workers. I'm going to stand up for our small businesses, and I am glad I have a chair who will do the same. Members, vote against this amendment.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I decided to speak on this because I actually worked at the Attorney General's office for 13 years. I was a prosecutor in that office and had the opportunity to handle felony appeals in Greater Minnesota, mostly from those in this body on the other side of the aisle. I handled appeals on behalf of your counties, like the Attorney General's office does now. County attorneys request assistance on a number of cases, including felony level appeals, because many of those offices are very small and can't handle that work. They continue to do great work at the Attorney General's office in that appellate division. They also do have prosecutors that go in at the request of many of your county attorneys to help prosecute really complicated crimes, again, in these offices that are very small. And I just did a quick little skim through and noticed a number of press releases about those convictions mostly for murder cases. Those are the kinds of cases they take from Benton County, Freeborn County, Asante County. I'll also say that they do civil commitments of sexually dangerous persons for many of your counties. I had the opportunity to do some of that work. They also do driver's license revocations for those who have that issue as well, all across the state. We voted earlier today on a bill related to DWI and licenses. The Attorney General's office is the one who is making sure that those folks the state is being adequately represented. So when you want to cut the budget to the Attorney General's office, this is the kind of thing that you are going to cut. And I would like to request a roll call. Thank you.
Roll call has already been requested. The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think before I get started with my point or my questioning, I just want to point out, Representative Moeller, again, this is not a cut to the Attorney General's office. This is their base funding. How many agencies this year have only gotten base funding? Let's be accurate here. I'm wondering if Representative Niska, if Leader Niska would yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Niska, you have House File 20. I know it's sitting on the table. And, you know, part of the reluctance and part of the questioning of the efficacy of the Attorney General's office in recent months and years has been centered around a court case called Energy Policy Advocates. And Representative Niska has a bill that would fix what is really a wild interpretation by the courts here. And what the effect of the decision is, Representative Niska, can you kind of give us, enlighten us a little bit on the effect of that court ruling and why House File 20 is so important when it comes to what the Attorney General does and the sunlight therein.
Representative Niska.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Long, state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Are we debating House File 20 or A10?
Mr. Speaker, advice.
We are on the amendment for Amendment A10 offered by Representative Davis. And Representative Niska, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Scott, for that question, which is really does bear quite a bit on the conversation that had been previously had. In particular, I heard, I think, Representative Greenman refer to an audio tape, which I think everyone acknowledges the efficacy of, as if it was created by Alpha News or something like that, simply because Alpha News was the only one that reported on it. And the troubling things that we learned on that audio tape and the Attorney General's office's response to that, I think really highlights the concerns that we should all have as we think about whether to massively increase the budget of the Attorney General's office beyond the base budget, or whether we need to be concerned about the way that that office is operating, the leadership in that office. And in particular, we've heard a lot of representations, a lot of claims about what happened after that audio tape, what happened before that audio tape. But what has happened as a result, and what we saw in the fraud committee, was in fact obstruction of any transparency into what is actually happening in the Attorney General's office. So we've heard in news reports that the Attorney General's office is pulling all-nighters to work on Trump executive orders in order to I guess, further the national network of Democratic attorneys general that the leader of the Attorney General's office is part of. What we haven't seen, what we haven't been able to learn, is what actually happened, what actually happens in the Feeding Our Future investigation, what actually happens in these investigations. Every single other prosecutor's office in the entire state has to release closed investigative data. So when investigations, criminal or civil, happen and then they close, every other prosecutor's office in the state has to release that information. The Attorney General's office, which is here asking for not just their base budget, not just the Medicaid fraud unit, which we all agree is a priority, not just the money that has been given to them in recent budget cycles to rebuild the criminal division, which, like Representative Mueller said, does very important work, but now is looking for even more money, presumably to continue to sue the federal government, to further the Attorney General's political ambitions. We need to be able to hold that office to the same standard that every other law office, every other prosecutor's office is held to, so that the people of Minnesota can see what's going on, can see how and why they should hold that office democratically accountable, and so they can inform us about what level we should be funding that office at. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Leader Niska, for that explanation. Members, because of this lawsuit, the Attorney General can hide not closed investigative data. We will never know in many cases whether he's been investigating anything or not. Because according to statute, according to this lawsuit, he can hide. And you laugh, but read the legal opinions. Read the legal opinion from the courts. He will be able to hide this closed investigative data, and we will never know. The public can never know. So maybe that is why the Republicans have a little bit of angst about putting future funding, more funding to this Attorney General, because there's a lack of transparency.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. I see that another member on our side of the aisle has asked to be recognized. I would prefer to go last on our side. Thank you.
Very well. The representative from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I rise to remind the members that the co-chairs for Health and Human Services are looking at significant cuts to nursing homes in the state of Minnesota, multi-million-dollar cuts. And so when we're looking at growing government to this degree at the State Attorney General's office, to the level of increased FTEs that we've seen in just 2 years, I think it's a reasonable amendment to be offered. We understand we have to fund core services for protection and all the things that have been outlined, but we also have a responsibility to our Minnesota seniors that are at a time in their life when they're vulnerable. And if the nursing homes are not funded and they have 3-digit in the millions of cuts, which is what's going to happen because decisions are being made to grow government at a record pace. We already grew government right down here where we are, we're 40% in 2023. We are taking from our communities back home. And I don't see anybody paying attention, but you're going to see closures in your communities. Seniors will be traveling 3 to 4 hours from greater Minnesota to find a location. And in the cities that have big hospitals, that's where the people are choosing to work. They're not choosing to work in the nursing home. So there's not going to be staffing and there's not going to be beds available because you can't take a patient or a resident if you don't have staff to provide the care. So I urge you to think about where we're allocating and prioritizing to the degrees we are, because the reality is we are taking a significant hit off the people that built this state of Minnesota at a time when they're at the most vulnerable times of their life. So members, I urge you to vote green on this amendment.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple things. One is it was mentioned a moment ago that how would we know what the Attorney General would be doing? Let's see. Lawsuit filings, various filings that are all public. It's very easy to know what is going on with the Attorney General. And I also, this lawsuit was mentioned over and over again, energy policy advocates. So I want to peel that onion back a little bit, right? Energy policy advocates is a front group for the fossil fuel industry. And what their long arm is reaching out into Minnesota, that lawsuit was initiated to disadvantage our Attorney General in another lawsuit that started in 2020, where he's trying to hold these people, ExxonMobil, Koch Industries, and the American Petroleum Institute, accountable for systematically over several decades deceiving Minnesotans about the true cost of climate change when they knew. So, transparency in this, when I hear this lawsuit over and over again, just remember this energy policy advocates lawsuit is initiated to disadvantage the Attorney General against the fossil fuel industry that has been really imposing huge costs on this state.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Kieran.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise first to encourage a no vote on this amendment. I find it really interesting that we're talking about where taxpayer dollars are going, who those dollars are defending, what purpose that is serving, and I wonder if Representative Niska might yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Kieran.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative Niska, at the beginning of this session, when the Republican Party broke the Constitution and led a coup on this institution, how much money did you try to get taxpayers to pay to your law firm that you work for?
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Curran. $0.
Representative Kieran.
I find that interesting. At the time, Representative Niska, when you were the sole chair of the Rules Committee, there was a unanimous approval on a resolution to hire attorneys at the very place where you work on the taxpayer's dime. So again, I ask, do you have an approximate number of how much you and your party were willing to spend on the legislative coup when you unconstitutionally took over this institution?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. What order of business are we on?
I will yield, Mr. Speaker. I will yield.
We are on discussion of the A10 amendment. The member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so I just want to point out a little bit
I
of
do
the...
still have the floor, Speaker.
I think she actually does, sir.
Representative Kieran, you did not ask any member to yield. Representative Hudson has the floor.
And I do have the floor, and I'm seeing the clear
Speaker,
disagreement among the party,
Mr.
but I
Speaker,
will sit for this. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I will yield to Representative Curran to continue speaking.
All right. Representative Kieran.
Thank you, Representative Hudson, for choosing to abide by rules today that we all agreed on. I'll end there, Speaker.
The member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was expecting more. Okay, so there's a little bit of sleight of hand going on here. So Representative Kraft, when you talk about that lawsuit and you defer to and try to draw attention to the subject matter of the lawsuit, what you're distracting us all from is the actual root concern represented in HF 20, which is why is it that the Attorney General's office, an official state office, is accepting help from an outside organization, a nonprofit, bringing their lawyers into an official office in order to prosecute that nonprofit's pet project. Doesn't matter what the pet project is, you can love the pet project. It can be your favorite thing in the world, your top issue. The question is whether it's appropriate for there to be outside influence on the state of Minnesota's Attorney General office regarding their priorities and how they spend their time. That's something that is certainly of value to the voters of this state. And what we've tried to accomplish with HF 20 is holding the Attorney General's office up to the standard that is upheld by literally every other state agency. You know, it was hilarious. When we had this debate on the Judicial Committee, there was this pretense that, oh, the Attorney General's office couldn't possibly distinguish between data on individuals and data not on individuals. Well, how the hell did they do it for 40 years before this lawsuit came around? How does every other state agency do it today, right now, this moment? These are the sorts of things that really deplete public trust in state government. The people are not as stupid as you think they are. They see this stuff and they know there's something smelly about it. Another sleight of hand. The ad hominem argument of, oh, this story came from Alpha News. It came from the American Experiment. Therefore, you can't trust it. Any high schooler who has taken basic logic can identify that fallacy as an ad hominem. What they reported was the content of an audio recording that was an exhibit in a court trial that was introduced, by the way, by the defendant, Amy Bach. Okay? So if you're going to undermine the credibility of the source of the information, you don't go to Alpha News, you don't go to the Center of the American Experiment, you go to Amy Bach, because she's the one who put it in there. I know that's inconvenient. Truth often is. You notice how when my colleague Representative Davis, in his exuberance, got up to do what you guys always do, raise a point of order to stop you from saying something that the other side doesn't like, we calmed him down. We went along with it. You know why? Because we're not afraid about the truth. That question that Representative Curran asked was given an honest answer, and there's no other question you could ask that would embarrass our leader because it's the truth. We're not afraid of what's real. I think that's a pretty good metric of who's hiding what, how many times we get interrupted and told we can't say a thing. The source, the content of this audio recording is clear. You've all heard it. In it, Attorney General Keith Ellison says that our governor, Tim Walz, agrees with him that our state agencies should not be refusing to offer grant payments to recipients based upon piddly, insignificant issues. The people that he's talking to went on to be indicted in the Feeding Our Future scandal. He said on tape, very clearly, I'm in a battle with the state agencies, a battle with the people who are tasked with holding grant recipients responsible. These facts are irrefutable. They are incontrovertible. And there's no amount of sleight of hand that is going to keep the people from this state from seeing that. And let me leave you with this caution, because I know where your political instincts are and I get it. The best favor I could do for you right now is to let you keep talking. But let me caution you. You are not going to want to look back on this moment and see yourself defending this Attorney General. There are things coming down the pike that are going to be extraordinarily embarrassing for anybody who's standing next to this guy. Keep that in mind.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I feel it's important to add one additional piece of information to Representative Curran's earlier point, which I think was supposed to be a question to me, but information that Representative Curran or any Democrat would have known if they had showed up for work for the first 23 days. If they had shown up for the Rules Committee hearing that was referenced, what any Democrat would know is that the Republicans did not hire my law firm or any arrangement that would benefit me personally. The House tried to hire 3 individuals outside of the law firm individually at incredible discounts that amounted to less than $5,000 total to defend us against the lawsuit brought by Democrats, including the Attorney General. Less than $5,000, and just in case anyone is keeping track, that is less than half the amount that a prior Rules Committee appropriated to the attorneys for a Democrat representative, for her personal attorneys to defend or to represent her in her personal lawsuit. That is the truth, and that is the truth that each one of you would know and should know if you had just shown up for work.
As a reminder to the body, we are on discussion of the A10 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you very much. And to the amendment itself, I would just like to, one, say that the $3 million that are in the budget are really to continue the services and to make sure that the representation of the state's law firm prosecutors are available to serve everybody in our state are critical dollars. I just want to level set just a minute. In 1998, which is a considerable amount of time ago, the AG's office was funded at 510 employees, which is 118 less than we have today. So I just want to say that. We are still down 31% of total employees, and we are down 42% of attorneys. And so when we are talking about defeating criminals, which is what the AG's office does, it is really important that they have the tools necessary. So members on our side, I would ask you to please vote no on the Davis amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, members, for that wonderful debate. It has definitely been robust. Again, I'll just bring up that the Attorney General's budget is almost $100 million. And my amendment actually gives him another $391,000 per year. So don't buy this. I want to be respectful. Don't buy this narrative that I'm trying to cut money from the Attorney General's budget here. I'm actually trying to giving him in this amendment $391,000 so that his office can continue to go after Medicaid fraud. because we have a lot of Medicaid fraud going on. And we have a lot of fraud going on in our state. And I'm not doing this amendment to go after the bad or the good things that the Attorney's General Office is doing. Again, he's got $100 million to do that, and maybe you could encourage him to fill those open positions that he has, a lot of them, to continue doing that. But there's a lot of bad things going on in that office as well. And I'm going to be a voice. I'm going to stand up for the hardworking taxpayer that is sick and tired of seeing what's going on in our state. This amendment addresses just a little bit of that. Vote green, members.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A10 amendment.
Sorry, I keep having headphones problems.
The clerk will call the roll of the members voting remotely.
Cha.
Okay.
Cha, no.
Cha votes no. Green.
No.
Green votes no. Hussein.
Hussein, no.
Louder.
Say it one more time. Hussein, no.
Hussein votes no. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill as amended. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 3045, as amended.
Third reading.
I recognize the member from Waseca, Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, and I also want to thank Chair Nash, Chair Cleavorn for the opportunity to be the only freshman on the Republican side, but also for ensuring that some critical programs were funded through our historical societies and their fiscal status. Our Minnesota Air National Guard Museum, our Hockey Hall of Fame, and our Minnesota Military Museum, as well as Farm America. Farm America happens to be in my district. It's a wonderful place. 2,000 plus elementary school children are in the process of visiting that facility this month and next month before school ends, and approximately 16,000 visitors come there every year to enjoy a farm experience. Many of us recall growing up with a farm experience, but that isn't as common anymore. So I appreciate the opportunity to see this continue to be funded, get a little bit more funding so we can keep this open and keep it going. It's primarily supported by volunteers, local community volunteers, but they do have to have a small staff that keeps the doors open year-round, and this will continue funding for that. Thank you very much, chairs.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to talk about some of the Medicaid fraud provisions contained in this bill. Minnesotans are a generous people, and when our neighbors and our communities are struggling, we believe in offering them a helping hand. That's why it's disappointing, it's frustrating, and downright unacceptable when that generosity is taken advantage of. That's why this bill rightfully cracks down on Medicaid fraud. Now, we talk a lot about grants in this body, which is important, but grants are only a fraction of our state funding. For example, the Department of Human Services, which is our largest state agency, only about 3% of the funds that go out the door are in the form of grants. Medicaid accounts for 89%. So the bipartisan provisions in this bill that I authored boost our ability to investigate and prosecute Medicaid fraud by first adding additional staff to the AG's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit to match the growth that we've seen in Medicaid. Second, it updates the subpoena power that the Attorney General's office has to match the subpoena power in these cases that county attorneys' offices have. And third, it brings the penalties for Medicaid fraud in line with other theft penalties. These provisions also make economic sense for our state. There's a 3-to-1 federal match on the dollars that we'll be spending to increase staffing in the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. And this unit, with a budget of roughly about $5 million per year, has won over $53 million in civil penalties and criminal restitution over the last 5 years alone. I appreciate the bipartisan support for these provisions, and I urge a green vote on the bill. Thank you.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you to the co-chairs of this committee and for making sure that the Healthy Aging Subcabinet is part of this bill for funding. I spent significant time with Representative Cleavorn and the Aging Task Force, and we are at the situation of now caring for the baby boomers in a large section of the Minnesota population, and I think it's very important to see the subcabinet part of this, and I'm also thankful to see the fraud committee and the action here into the Attorney General's office for medical assistance fraud. We need to make sure that the money is going in the best interest of our community and the best interest of taxpayer responsibility and accountability. So thank you for your work, both chairs and members on the committee.
I recognize the member from Goodhue, Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm going to speak on the election side of things and want to thank Chair Freiberg and Chair Quam for the Elections Committee. Being a vice chair, it was very encouraging to see that we came up with a technical bill that really is fixing some things. It's our job as state legislators to make things crystal clear so that the law is interpreted correctly. I heard Chair Freiberg say earlier that the goals are to have safe, secure, and free elections, and I could not agree more. We have more work to do. At the beginning of this session, we had many people, the Republicans, we had many meetings with people who really are boots on the ground, who are there, they're election judges, election workers, and we talked to the counties. And they are asking for technical fixes to our election laws. And so this was a great start. I do think we have a lot of work to do going into the future, into the conference committee, but also in 2026. We not only need to have safe, secure, and free elections, as Chair Freiberg said, but we also need to make sure that these are completely transparent. We need to make sure that people are not questioning our elections. This last year, we had a lot of lawsuits here in Minnesota for that reason, and I am committed to working on that. And I know Chair Freiberg and Chair Quam is as well. But unfortunately on this bill, I will be a no. And the reason why I am a no vote on this bill is because of not accepting the amendment that Representative Davis offered today. In my district, I hear from entities like our schools. They are cutting. They are looking at cutting. I hear from EMTs. I hear from our nursing home, our disability homes. All of these places, which you could say are our bare essential needs within our districts, are hurting. And the priority to give money to the Attorney General office when these other very critical entities are hurting is not acceptable. And that's why I will be a no vote today.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank Chair Cleavorn and Chair Nash for including the Minnesota Business Filing Fraud Prevention Act in the state government bill, and for your collaboration in getting it to its final form. And thanks to the Secretary of State Simon and his team for bringing forward this important issue. This bill addresses a known problem, business identity fraud. This happens when bad actors hijack a legitimate business or create fake ones in someone else's name. Victims don't often realize what's happened until they're facing bills, legal trouble, or tax liabilities for a business they never owned or actions their actual business did not take. When this happens, many call the Secretary of State's office for help. The problem is the office lacks the statutory ability to help beyond aiding law enforcement who may investigate. This bill creates a process that makes it easier to correct the record and unwind the damage, ensuring that the victims can reclaim their businesses and identities without long delays or costly legal representation. In addition, the bill shuts down deceptive solicitations that entice business owners to pay for a service they could easily do for free or at a lower cost on the office's website. Protecting business owners and individuals from fraud strengthens trust in the system and keeps Minnesota's business community strong. Please vote green for this bill.
I recognize the member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to speak to both the elections and the state gov bill. I want to thank the chairs and co-chairs of the elections committee. I'll start with Chair Freitag. Thank you so much. That's an inside joke. Chair Freiberg. I just want to say, Chair Freiberg, you're very easy to get along with. Thank you for that. I will just recall a time in committee where we were actually both out of order, going back and forth at each other. And we immediately, after the committee talked about it, and everything was very cool. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair Quam, for your leadership. Again, thank you to the vice chairs, to the members, to the staff who work so very hard, partisan staff and nonpartisan staff. We could not do this job without you. Kudos to you. You really do make us look like we know what we're talking about, and I'm very appreciative of that. In this bill, we are rolling back the absentee ballot drop-off deadline from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. And, you know, I advocated for 3 p.m. and I got 5 p.m. I'm very grateful for that because we did, probably unintended, we put a huge burden on our counties in the last biennium. And this will help our counties. There's some other things that we're fixing too to help out our counties that I know they're going to be very grateful for. And so I would like us to continue to protect it from their perspective. Let's see, we're funding the Office of Legislative Auditor on the state gov side of the bill, giving them 4 new auditors. I'm very excited for that, and you might ask, well, wait a minute, you just talked about how you don't like to grow government. Well, there is one area that I like to grow government, and that's when it comes to efficiency and accountability. And the Office of Legislative Auditor does an amazing job with that, and so I am very grateful for that. I don't like growing government, though, folks. I came here to do the opposite. I promised my constituents at the door that that's what I'd be advocating for, and that's what's in my heart. And I heard from a good legislator on the other side of the aisle the other day, vote your conscience. The state gov bill, and elections bill together, last biennium was a $410 million increase. Later, someone on the committee actually came up and showed me some paperwork that showed no, it was actually a $1.2 billion increase. I'm sorry I didn't get to digging in and finding out which one was accurate, but we keep growing government. And I got to ask the question, when will it stop? And here we're growing government again, so I can't support it. Thank you, Chair Cleavorn. You've been tough on me in committee, and it's made me a better legislator. Thank you. Chair Nash, I've never seen someone run such a tight ship in committee as yourself. And I am learning, and just I won't take up too much more time here, but there was one point in committee where Chair Nash gave me the gavel and he's sitting at the desk, and I was confused about when we were to get to the amendment. And so I just stopped and I looked at Chair Nash and I said, Chair Nash, what do I do? And he was gracious enough to work with me, and you've been very patient with me. So I thank you for that, and you've been a great mentor to me. So with that, members, that's where I stand on this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a good bill. Vote yes. Freitag out.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Well, I must commend my co-chair for the briefest comments I think I've had him give. I am very pleased that we have a bipartisan election bill. I am pleased that we had an active debate, but we had a very civil committee. And we did a lot of hard work. We did not include many things that on both sides people were very passionate for. But we did include items that addressed some of the concerns that have popped up in the last several elections and some of the legal issues that have been in the courts for several elections. So this bill, the election portion, will help election integrity, help improve the confidence we have in elections, decrease the amount of court time the local governments have because they confuse and don't quite follow election law. But it's the people that need to see that we, on this election bill, came together, worked together for a bipartisan bill that can give you more confidence in our elections. I also serve on the State Gov Finance Policy Committee, and there was a lot of energetic debate there as well. This bill has components from both sides, some of it very hard fought for, but they did come together to support things that needed to be done. No one is absolutely happy, but it is far superior to the other chamber. So I will be voting for this bill because out of the choices that we have, the House bipartisan activity by the chairs and the committees is what we need to strongly support into conference committee to show that we can work for the people and do it bipartisanly. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'll take us back to the beginning of this. If you remember, I said that this would not be the bill that I wrote on my own, and Chair Cleavorn wouldn't have written this the way it is written if it was left to her. And I'll share a couple of things. Chair Cleavorn was not excited to take House File 3 and the provisions that were in it, and I wasn't excited to take a lot of the things that she brought my way. And we never really had animated discussion. We had frank discussions. We never stormed out. We never had to have the bill taken away and go to leadership. We worked through the bill. And again, I'm not thrilled by it. A bunch of you would say I would love to cut government below base. I did too. And Chair Torkelson's gone, so I can mock him in his absence. When you run and you know that you're likely to be a chair and you want to do what most of us want to do, which is cut government, you think, oh, it's going to be great. We're going to cut government. Well, we're tied for the first time again since 1978. The chief clerk gave me a quick look of affirmation. 79. Thank you. That's unusual, unprecedented. And I will say that we've done this better than they did. I'm going to get a nod from him again. We did it way better than they did. I get it. We want to reduce, we want to cut to the bone, we want to cut through the bone. That would be the preference from me if I had the ability to draft a bill from a blank pad of paper. But we did get a lot of very good things in here, and it is a bipartisan bill. And as much as you want to tout the things that you did, you also have to own the things that you didn't get as well and recognize that we are in a tied legislature. You've seen a lot of amendments get thrown up on the board and they die in a tie. That's how this works. But, you know, Chair Davids so often will like to give a song title to his bills, and he's not even listening, which is sad. I'll start again. Chair Davids, oftentimes, there he is, likes to give song titles to his bill. And I was talking with Chair Cleavorn, and I think that maybe the Rolling Stones, You Can't Always Get What You Want, is not a bad title to this bill, because if you try sometime, you just might find that you get what you need. Both sides are getting a little something in this bill. And I know that you've probably got people on your side, Chair Cleavorn, that came and said, you did what? Nash negotiated what? And I've had the same. But this is the bill that we have. Once again, you give me a pad of paper and a crayon or a pen, I'll write something very different. But here's where we are. And I think that there is enough in here that people should realize that a tremendous amount of effort went into it. A tremendous amount of bipartisan effort went into it. Once again, I want to thank our staff, all state gov staff, both sides of the aisle, are nonpartisan there in the back, because they helped take what we were putting forward in committee and they put it on paper, and that's what you have before you. So, members, I recognize that this is not what both sides want, but I'm voting green. Thank you.
Any further discussion to the bill? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you, and I would like to just take this moment to thank Co-Chair Nash. We did have some robust conversations and, you know, stayed a few days a little later than either one of us had intended. And again, I want to thank our nonpartisan staff and our partisan staff and our pages. They make our committee work happen, and I just want to take this moment. But I too want to bring us back to where I started today, and that's the importance of this bill to the very work that you do in this chamber, and the fact that it funds the things that are critical to keeping this chamber running. Our front staff, our nonpartisan staff, our revisor. These are people who come to work every day and work hard for the democracy and for our state. And so I think we owe it to them to make sure that we do the work that we're supposed to do and make sure that we ensure that state government works for the people, and that we also remember that we have a duty and an obligation to make sure that our constituents are represented in this chamber, and they sent you here to do this. So I'm going to ask you for your green vote for this bill. I'm going to ask you to remember the importance of all of us being in this chamber and working in a bipartisan way to do the work of the people of Minnesota. Please vote green. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The chief clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Chaw.
All right, here we go. Go ahead.
Shaw, yes.
Chaw votes aye. Green.
Green, yes.
Green votes aye. Hussein.
Hussein vote aye.
Hussein votes aye. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 113 yeas and 21 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.